what's the score?
Okay, before we start the recording, there's 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, and it's 66:66. We'll turn this over and we'll see what happens when we're done.
No, don't turn it over.
Okay, would like to welcome everybody to our Planning Commission meeting on February 23rd of 2024. We're going to begin tonight, to note that this meeting is being broadcast and recorded. We'll begin tonight with an invocation by Commissioner Thompson, and then Commissioner Call will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Heavenly Father, as we come before Thee this evening as a planning commission, so grateful for our many blessings, especially for the opportunity we have to live here in Lindon in the state of Utah. And we ask a special blessing on our legislators and leaders that they can continue to do the best for our state as possible. And now as we're about to go into our session, we ask that we also as commissioners may be thoughtful and make wise choices regarding the betterment of our city. And we're thankful, so thankful for our many blessings. We ask Thee to bless our military and law enforcement that keeps our country and city safe. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Would the audience and commission please rise? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to start tonight with a audible roll call. Sharon Call.
Here.
Mike Marchbanks. Here. Rob Callis.
Here.
Steve Johnson. Here. Scott Thompson.
Here.
Jared Showers.
Here.
And we excuse Commissioner Danielson tonight, who's not with us. The next item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from January 9th, 2024. The planning commissioners have been provided with these minutes beforehand to review, and looking for any corrections or additions to the minutes.
I think you picked up on the
Yeah,
one correction.
I mentioned the one that Commissioner Thompson's not listed on the last two motions that needs to be added.
Correct.
Anybody see anything else that needed to be added?
Just that agenda date. And she's corrected
And she's
that.
corrected that.
Mhm.
And if there aren't any more corrections, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Item number 3 is a time for public comment. We only have a couple public here, but is there, for anything that's not on the agenda, is there anybody here that would like to comment on anything that's not on the agenda? Okay. If not, we'll move on to item number 3, which is a recommendation for an ordinance amendment. Is that correct?
Item 4.
Item 4 is an amendment, and it's not scrolling as fast as I want it to. We're getting there. Okay. The presenting the applicant is Lindon City, and the presenting staff is Mike Florence. So we'll let staff present.
Great. Thank you, commissioners. It's great to be here with you, and I really appreciate you pushing this meeting back for me this evening. So last year, a couple different times, we talked about trying to strengthen the commercial farm zone. Wadley Farms last June went through some different entitlements with the Planning Commission and City Council. The commission made some comments at that time that they'd like to, or the council and the commission made some comments that they would like to strengthen this ordinance. We then had kind of a work session with both the commission and the council, and so there were some minor tweaks that they recommended, and so I've kind of taken that direction this evening, and have this proposal for you. So the first section is 17.51.10. It's the purpose and the objective section. The only change in this section, I'm referring back to the list of permitted and conditional uses. So instead of saying and allowing associated commercial activities, I'm just referring back to those specific uses that are allowed in the zone. The other item is striking out the word industry and changing it to production, because in the ordinance we have a heading called agricultural production, and I don't want it to be confused with, industrial agriculture, so, something like that. This is kind of the meat of the change here. We've changed, the current ordinance has all the commercial uses listed, and then it talks about the commercial farm zone, the agricultural production in the commercial farm zone. So what this ordinance does is it moves the agricultural production portion up closer to the beginning. It is the second or third section before commercial, and then what I'm proposing is to change the definition of agricultural production. The original definition says, it shall, let's see, where did I put it in here? Oh, it says it's defined as the production of food for human or animal consumption through the raising of crops and or breeding and raising of domestic animals or fowl in such a manner that there is a reasonable expectation of profit. And we had, both the Planning Commission and the Council had lots of discussion about what does it mean to have a reasonable expectation of profit. So I've looked at other definitions from around the country, and I came up with this other one that I liked and found. It says, agricultural production shall be defined as agricultural activities including cultivation, processing, and distribution of agricultural products that result in the product being marketed for and sold at retail or wholesale, but does not include industrial agricultural uses. And so it gets us away from needing to check on, are you making a expectation of profit? That's what these farms do. They're selling things at retail or wholesale. They're selling hay or apples or, alpaca fur, like the Walker Farms. And so that's the reason why I was proposing to change that definition. Now, we do have already a definition of agriculture, and that's where you get into, defines more specifically, it could be cultivating crops, it could be raising animals or fowl or things like that. So that was the reason I changed that definition. I thought it was a little more specific to what we want to do. The other major change, and I'd like to have some discussion about this, but changing the minimum agricultural production requirement from 40% to 50%. That way it puts it on the same balance as the commercial portion of the property. And one of so if you're required to have a minimum 5 acres to do a commercial farm zone, 40% is 2 acres, so this would require 2.5 acres instead of 2 acres. And then the last part of this would be coming up with an agricultural plan. So remember, this is for someone to come in and do a commercial farm zone, they have to request a zone change from the Planning Commission and City Council. That's a legislative act. And so what I'm saying in this number 3 here at the bottom is that someone has to submit this agricultural production plan to you that outlines the agricultural products that will ultimately be marketed and sold at retail or wholesale, a plan demonstrating how agricultural open space will be preserved through continued agricultural production, a plan outlining the proposed commercial use and how the use will sustain and support the emphasis of agricultural production. So someone will present that to you as part of their zone change, and then you can decide, okay, this person wants to raise 20 chickens and do this massive commercial thing. you know, is that really what you want as part of the zone change? And so that'll give you a chance to really and analyze whether or not you want to change the zoning on that. Legislative acts are totally, you can make that decision. There's, you know, not like a precedent that, oh, because we changed it for so-and-so, we can't change it now. These are legislative zone changes, so. The last couple minor changes were, our ordinance said the following is a list of permitted, conditional, and non-permitted uses. Well, we never listed any non-permitted uses, so I just changed it to permitted and conditional in this zone, and that's what we've got. And then finally, what I'd like to propose is, so someone, like our 2 commercial farm zones, they have multiple parcels. I think Wadley Farms has, you know, 5 or 6, Walker Farms has 5 or 6, and the ordinance allows that currently. And what I'm saying is part of this process, let's consolidate it into one lot or parcel. That way staff, that way that you know exactly where the commercial or the agricultural area is located on the property. Lot lines don't get changed back and forth all the time. I think it just helps staff to know exactly, identify what's there for the long term. And that would not apply to the Walker or Wadley at this point. It would only be if we have any new ones come in.
I was gonna say, cause Wadley, I mean, they've got commercial interspersed all over with the, you know, with the agricultural.
Yeah, and then
So
a whole bunch of different parcels.
Others wouldn't be able to do that then.
Well, no, they'd still be able to do it. What I'm saying is you just can't have 6 or 7 parcels. You need to combine those into one.
Okay.
And would there's just a fee for them to do that at the county, right? Just to,
If it's a parcel, then they just have their surveyor write up a new legal description that is the overall legal description. If one of the, say they had a lot, part of the property was a lot and a parcel, then they would need to do a subdivision lot combining it into one subdivision. They would come to you for a plat amendment.
And as long as they've got 50% commercial and 50% agricultural, then within that parcel, then they're okay.
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
I would think there'd be some pushback on that. I mean, obviously it doesn't apply to the current people that are taking advantage of that, but I just wonder if that is necessary. Like, if I'm that property owner, and as I develop that, I might develop that with a future in mind that might not be the commercial farm zone. If I'm building houses and structures and things like that, I may want to keep that as one property. And of course, as I'm building, I'm meeting setbacks and things like that on those properties. But, so is that necessary for the city to put that in there? I'm trying to understand why that's that important.
It was just more, you know, to help me long-term, or whoever's in my position to make sure they're still meeting the standard, what's identified. You know, it was just more that, is it, you know, am I gonna die on this item? No. You know, I think it's something that helps city staff, you know, but
I think in the future, when that property changes ownership or changes use, you're gonna get some really wonky property lines as they go to subdivide that or re-subdivide that, you know what I mean?
yeah, you probably would anyways, but.
would that cause the people, it's more of a commitment to their mission and their goal if they have to combine everything into one. I don't know, maybe rather than,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna do this, but really 5 years from now, I'm planning on selling it off as, you know.
Well, they
for
might
lots.
not find that it's profitable for what they're
Right.
doing, so I
But,
don't fault
yeah.
them for doing
And
that.
at that time, they'll have to come in with a subdivision plat anyways to divide it up.
Yeah, couldn't they realign that? I mean, it doesn't
Well, it-
have to stay that, does
It
it?
just depends on what they've built. If they've built some permanent structures on there, then that's gonna dictate where property lines are gonna go in the future when they subdivide it. So that's what I'm envisioning. Now, if they combine it into one lot, does that help them with property taxes at all, with some of the urban farming exemptions, or there's no green belt maybe necessarily on that small of a lot, but
Up doing the green belt.
I'm not gonna die on that point either, but it just seems to me long-term, I don't know that if I was that property owner, I'd wanna put them into one.
If it's easier to administrate it at this point, and if it can be changed, if the use changes, I don't see a problem with it.
So maybe.
There's more to
let-
subdividing
Yeah.
than there is to bring
Bring
properties together. There's quite a lot more to subdividing than.
Yeah, is there any more to your presentation, Mike, or should we maybe at this point open the public hearing so that we can hear if the public has some interest?
And then I might pull one thing up, so.
Okay, while he's doing that, this is a ordinance amendment, so it does need to be a public hearing at this point. Do we have someone?
I'll move to open a public hearing.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The voting was unanimous. We're now in a public hearing. So we've had a few questions with staff on this. Is there anybody from the public that would like to mention anything or have any questions of this presentation? Okay, would you come up and sign in for us and state your name?
Tanner College. I'm, I guess, representative of Wadley Farms tonight. So not so much comments, more just want to say that we've kind of reviewed on our end of things. And a lot of these suggestions that Mike has come up with kind of have clarified some of those discrepancies as far as the usage of the land and maintaining that intended use of the commercial farm zone. So on our end of things, we're satisfied and just appreciative of the city and kind of being able to work with us as one of those two commercial farm zones in the city. So.
Do you have any input on our question that Commissioner Showers, do you see, I mean, it doesn't affect yours because your grandfathered in.
Exactly. I think from a development standpoint, you know, there's not a lot of open space in Lindon currently where people could come in and do this type of thing. So the way that you would go about it is acquiring those adjacent parcels. And so, like he stated, it's a lot easier to combine all those parcels than it would be to separate in the end. And then for the tax purposes, for farming, that's separate, that's that green belt issue. And I think that I'm not quite sure, but it has to be a separate parcel for parceling out the portions of green belt. So as far as input, I would say that would be harder to roll back and subdivide all that. I don't see it being necessary, but it sounds like that's something that could be changed. That's just my input on the last few minutes of conversation there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want me to sign in?
Well, and I think he brings up a good
Yes,
point too. If you acquire and add to, let's say you start off with the 5 acres or whatever, but the neighbor on the corner sells their house and it's adjacent to your commercial farm, do you want them to combine that lot, or can they operate on 2 parcels at
They
that
wouldn't
point?
have to as long as the other one was 5 acres, right?
Well, if it was gonna, I would assume on this, it'd have to be one lot to be.
You could start with a 5 acre, 1 parcel, but by the time, you know, this neighbor sells and this neighbor dies and you acquire it, and then all of a sudden you've got.
And I think that's maybe what's had led me to this is like, so here's Walker Farms. They've got agricultural here.
Yeah.
They've got some here, but it also bleeds over into this lot that they've recently purchased. It's just all over the place, and I don't know exactly where all the 2 acres are right now, with all the different lots. And so,
And I
They
guess,
can provide and pay for a
Yeah.
survey, potentially, to.
And refresh my memory, with them, there was an issue, they wanted to do something, a greenhouse, and they'd have to come back and change the ordinance, and
yeah,
would that affect what we're talking about here? No, something different.
well, sorry, and I think I skipped over that in the presentation. Actually, I did, sorry. I did have one more slide. I also put in a minimum square footage requirement. So what the current ordinance says, you can't have more than 40% of the property in buildings coverage. That was supposed to be just for the commercial, in speaking with Alan and, before when this ordinance was written. So this clarifies that only 40% of the commercial property can be covered in buildings. Then what I added 15% of the agricultural property could be in buildings. So that would get you to about 16,000 square feet in buildings in the agricultural.
To park your tractor or to
Put a
sheds.
barns.
Sheds, barns. I don't know if that, I just came up with that number. I don't know if that's sufficient, if that's the right number, but,
Well, you also had in there some of the current percentages of buildings and that on the agricultural portion, and it was only like, I can't remember, 9% or something.
yeah.
Right, and so 15% would be actually a lot more than they have now.
That's correct, yep.
And then Walker, I can't remember what the percentage was on that.
Yeah, I don't remember right offhand.
But it was a real low percentage, a lot lower than that 15%.
Yeah.
What are we actually trying to accomplish with all this change?
To make sure that agricultural production is at the forefront of the ordinance.
Primary purpose.
Are we ready as a commission? Is there any more public that have any comment? So maybe we should go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we can discuss it as commissioners. Do I have a
Make
motion?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, so now we're back for the commission to discuss it and to ask staff any further questions.
My question was exactly what are we trying to accomplish? Explain it one more time to me.
So I've added a lot in there about making sure the agricultural production on that 50% is the focus of the ordinance. And so when someone brings a plan to you, that needs to be the focus. And then then you'll determine, okay, my commercial use, how's that supporting this agricultural preservation and agricultural open space? So that is trying to bring the agricultural production to the forefront of the ordinance.
So you've got 50%. Well, first of all, you've got a 5-acre minimum. Then you've got 50% of that 5 acres has to be in agricultural production.
Correct. We're increasing that from 40 to 50.
Okay, so let's say we do that. Let's say then the neighbor wants to sell 2 more acres. I'm still back with Jared saying, are we saying that parcel those 2 acres have to be incorporated into one parcel?
That's the way it is written, that it would have to be like that,
And
but
what is the purpose of that?
just trying to monitor exactly what's there, how much commercial we have, what's the overall project size.
Not administrative.
And
That
with
means
that,
every time he picks up another piece of land,
well, only if he wants it to be part of the commercial farm. If he picks up a piece of land that he just wants to be an investment property, or he doesn't have to put in
Wants
the
to leave the
commercial
house
farm.
on it.
It's just if he wants it added to the acreage of the farm, that's when, my understanding, correct, Mike, is, they could buy up all the land they wanted and leave it as long as they continued to meet the requirements.
what if he wanted to put it into vineyard? Then he would.
I don't think it'd be any problem
And
putting it in
if
the
it was
vineyard.
if it was part of the commercial farm, then they would need to come to you to get the zone change
Yeah,
first. So maybe it's fine with the zone change.
yeah, they would have to get the zone changed for that parcel. Because I think like with Walker, even the parcel, I think, was the Boyd Walker's home that they bought. I don't think that's ever come to be changed zone. Maybe it has, and I missed it, but,
I don't think so.
so that's really can't be part of the commercial farm, even though it might be in production, right, until that zone change.
One thing I just noticed too, I think this is another reason why I was trying to correct this. When we worked on this ordinance 8 months ago or last June with Alan, I added this section right here. I already added that in here, that it had to be consolidated into one lot or parcel. now that I think, now having this discussion, maybe we roll that back to what the original ordinance said.
Because in this situation where somebody added 2 acres to left them, and if they rolled it back, if they rolled it in, then they'd have to increase their agricultural production somewhere
They would.
on the property to
Yeah.
maintain that 50%. Whereas if they bought it and just left it there as a separate lot,
Yeah,
then they could do what they want on that lot, I guess.
yeah.
Well, they couldn't do what they want on that lot if they wanted to have some commercial farm zone permitted use on that lot. They would
Oh,
have to
right.
consolidate that.
They would
and
have to
that.
consolidate it, right, okay.
And I guess I can see the point Mike's making now, that because they have to make a zone change, you should be able to know that that's part of the commercial zone, because it would be zoned, that parcel would be zoned. So maybe it's not as important to join them, but maybe have people understand that you can't just buy a piece next to it and it doesn't magically become commercial farm zone. It has to go through the whole process of being rezoned.
Yeah. So why don't we take this section back to its original?
And there could be some instances where, when they combine them, there's gonna be motivation for them to combine them because of setbacks. Oh, I wanna put a barn right here for my commercial farm zone, and it's across, in that case, they'd probably want to come to us, like we've seen other stuff, and combine those parcels so that they meet setback requirements.
Yeah, and if it's it's part of a subdivision, they'll have to come to you anyways.
I know the comment is
Yeah,
closed.
the public comment's closed, but go ahead, we'll.
Just in regards to this, I know, for example, a lot of adjoining lots are owned by separate entities of Wadley Farm, or my parents essentially. They own real estate investment properties that surround the property that have not been incorporated and are not a part of that commercial zone. Those are still residentially zoned. And so, however, when they built their new house, they acquired a property on the back that was incorporated incorporated into that with a plan to farm that, and that is part of the commercial farm zone. So it's essentially what we're talking about. This existence is what we have going on, and that's kind of how it's playing out now.
Mike, before we undo that, I can see value in having one parcel that meets the minimum requirement, the 5 acres. But beyond that, it wouldn't matter to me in what entity they held their properties, investment properties. I mean, they don't need to come get my permission or our permission if they've met the requirement with the minimum 5 acres, and they buy a parcel next door, tear it down and plant corn on the whole piece. They don't need our permission to do that. Do
Unless they want it brought into that.
Yeah, but they could farm it all day long without bringing it in, and they could leave it a separate parcel.
Right.
The only time they'd need to rezone it is if they built enough that they needed that
Exactly.
acreage, and then
So
they'd have to
I
rezone
see
it.
some value in having the one minimum parcel that meets the requirement, the 5 acre minimum. But beyond that, I don't know that we care if it's in multiple entities unless they are crossing boundary lines and need to bring it in and amend the plat.
Unless they want it part of the parcel.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, and you've already said it, the minimum required. So if you said the minimum 5 acre required development area shall be consolidated into one lot,
Yeah.
then you've hit it there, and that demonstrates the commitment, but then they could do whatever they want later.
The fear of not doing it that way is if they had several parcels making up the minimum 5, and it was already its own legal parcel, they could sell some off without even coming and talking to us about it.
Yeah.
And then they're not meeting the requirements then.
But if then they go to and build some building on that new parcel that is part of the farm, they need to do it.
Then they would need to do it. But if they just leave it a home, or if they tear the home down and plant corn or some crop, that's not our business.
Yeah, and I guess that was one of the things I was thinking about. What if someone does sell part of it off or amend a
Well,
lot line?
that's
and
why I'm kinda inclined to have the one parcel that meets the requirement on our books so that, that we know that it meets the requirements.
The one that fulfills the requirement.
Exactly.
Okay.
5 acres.
All right.
Does
So
that
I
work?
like what
Does that
Scott
make
said.
sense, Jared?
I like what Scott said. That'd be a very easy change to make in that.
And if you made that, I mean, you could make that and it could still go to the council without coming back here.
Because that you're just clarifying what the minimum required development is.
Yeah.
All you're doing is adding the minimum 5-acre required development area.
And that's one parcel, is what we're saying.
We're saying that at least one parcel
I
has to be
think the
5
intent
acres.
of what you intended is what we ought to stick with.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments from the council or discussion?
Yeah, and I apologize, I'm thinking out loud a little bit. So you've got this 50% that's in agricultural production, we're calling that what? Just agricultural?
Agriculture
Use.
production. Yep.
The other 50% would be a commercial use, right?
Yes.
Can you have a commercial and agricultural use at the same time? And
Yeah.
I'm assuming, because there's things like, you know, apple orchards where people may go, and you might charge them $10 or whatever, go gather a bushel of apples or something like that. So you're okay,
We're more about the land area, not
the,
like the land area, the 2.5 acres of
okay. 'Cause there's some
production.
there's some fun uses for the agricultural part of that that could also generate income for
Yep.
Well,
Yeah,
all
that
of it
that
would be
totally,
experiential type of,
Corn maze or.
thing. Corn maze is one.
or
right.
like, you know, the vineyard at Wadley Farms and stuff, so.
On 1751-001, I just wanted to clarify, when it talks about for a 5-acre property owner would not be required to provide 2.5 acres of property instead of 2 acres. Is that not supposed to be there?
Oh, that should be now. Sorry, that should
Yeah.
say they should now, be- sorry.
And I had
Okay.
that underlined, I was gonna bring
I
that
re-
up, 'cause that,
Without having my right-hand person, there's some editing errors in
Okay.
if I've
these
got that
staff
underlined
reports.
and highlighted.
Just
too.
like I left Kathy on the ordinances at the end instead of Brittany, so, yeah, that should say now, I caught.
Okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure because that's the way you were saying it, but then it was not what it was
Yeah.
saying here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I picked up
So
on that too.
the other comment I have, and I did read it, but I didn't read it with this lens. So these guys have got some Airbnbs on that we've had maybe something to say about as a city. Have we clarified anything in this update that would talk about the use of some of these buildings in short-term rentals?
Yeah,
That was done.
that ordinance we passed last June or July now allows you to do an Airbnb, and you can have so many per acre.
Okay,
I
so we're
think-
not, and I remember that discussion, but we're not touching anything there
No,
on that, okay.
Thank you. Anything else from any of the other commissioners? Are we ready for a motion?
Well, I think it really brings to the forefront, you know, the emphasis on the agricultural use and the agricultural production.
Yeah.
So I think it's great.
So if we're ready for a motion, I think what we talked about somewhat, that we want to put the 1 5-acre lot minimum or whatever back into the ordinance.
Well, it's
or just adding
Still
that
there.
language.
Still there, but adding that
just
language.
clarifying language.
Yeah.
So whoever makes the motion, if they can add that.
Okay, I can try that.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
I move to recommend to approve ordinance amendment 2024-04-0 with the following clarification. That the minimum 5-acre lot is required to be combined into one parcel.
Yeah, so the minimum 5-acre required development area shall be consolidated into one parcel or lot.
We have a motion.
It can be more than 5.
Yes.
Right, but a minimum of 5. I second that motion.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5 in our agenda. This is also, well, I think this is a new ordinance, not an ordinance amendment.
This is an ordinance you've heard, this is your third time hearing it now, so. It's been continued two other times, so.
I'm getting lots of notes on this last one.
I'm trying to spice up my presentations a little bit, so.
Nice.
I guess I went too far. Give me just a second to get back.
Yeah, it's turning a long way.
Can't put any more than 6 stacked up tall.
That's right.
Okay.
With something on top.
So item number 5 is an ordinance amendment. The applicant is Lindon City again, and our presenting staff is Michael Florence.
Okay, so this, last time the council heard, or the planning commission heard this was back in August. It's been on the back burner a little bit, and so I'm finally bringing it back to you. The last time we met, there's kind of 3 items that we discussed was coming up with a minimum lot size where containers would be prohibited. And then we talked a lot about greenbelt, and the commission said, well, you know, could we just put in a minimum acreage requirement instead of, for agricultural areas instead of greenbelt? We also talked about screening, and I want to come back to that. And then we talked about a minimum setback from property line in agricultural areas. And so the definition, I haven't changed this definition. It means a container fabricated for the purposes of transporting freight or goods on a truck, railroad, or ship, including cargo containers, intermodal shipping containers, storage units, or other portable structures that are placed on private property and used for storage and shipment of materials and merchandise.
Does that include a semi? That a semi could meet that definition or not?
I took that, I originally, the last couple months have had it in and out of the definition. I put it in the ordinance, I think, and I hope I didn't forget it. I meant to put in the ordinance, sorry, I've got to look at it again. That I was just saying that did not qualify as a portable storage container. Because I didn't think we wanted semi-trucks.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure because it says means a container fabricated for purpose of transporting freight or goods on a truck. With that in and of itself, would say a semi-trailer.
Well, these would be portable ones that you would take on and off.
Okay, so
You
portable,
could say with
okay.
all axles and tires removed.
Yeah,
That's something, I just wanted to clarify that we're not,
I think, sorry, it's been a few days since I've read this. Maybe I missed that. I thought I put something specific saying that semi-trailers.
this does not include a semi-trailer.
Yeah, I
A
may,
currently registered semi-trailer or something.
I don't think it's in there.
I think I forgot to put that in there as I was writing that, so maybe that's something we can discuss and talk about if we want that in there. What I did put, going back to this, and this is totally arbitrary and needs to be discussed, that I put containers are prohibited on lots less than 12,000 square feet. If you think there's a better square footage number, lot size, let's change that. But that was one of the changes that I brought up.
Third, it's about a third.
So that would mean, right, the above the canal are 1,200 square feet, right? So we're just saying a smaller, a
Anderson
townhome,
Farms and
Anderson
Sago
Farms.
Homes, you're not gonna
You're not
get
gonna
one.
have containers.
There may be a few lots down at Anderson Farms that meet that, but you'd have to have it craned in there to, there's no side yard access to get it back
Heavy
there.
lift.
Yeah, so. Just running through the ordinance really quick. Let's see, maybe used as accessory buildings only with the following requirements. They need to meet all setback requirements of the zone. They cannot be used for other uses than storage. We don't want anybody living in these. If they're in in residential zones, if it's greater than 120 square feet, you need to get a building permit. That'd be the same for any tough shed or anything like that. If a building permit's been issued for construction or remodeling of the building, you can have a portable storage container on your property for a year. It needs to be removed after 10 days after construction's been finalized. Let's see, if you've got an emergency situation, you can have it there for 6 months. Say your basement floods, you need to store some stuff in your driveway, that you can keep it in there for 180 days. That 180 days, where that comes from is the building code. That's how long you have to get how long your building permit's good for. It starts to be more permanent under the building code if it's longer than been there longer than 180 days. Portable containers shall not be used for retaining walls. In a residential zone, it needs to meet the requirements of 17.44.140. That's your setback requirements. The exterior walls need either be clad in something similar to the house, or at least the numbers and wording need to be painted over, so it's all one color. And then this is where the 12,000 square feet comes in. Let's see. In the agricultural zones, you can have 2 portable shipping containers if you have a minimum 3 acres. Sorry, I shouldn't say agricultural zone, an agricultural use on a property. So if you've got 3 acres of an agricultural operation, then you could have 2 containers. They have to have a 5-foot setback from the property line.
What about horse property? Is that agricultural use?
Under our ordinance, it would be if it's 3 acres.
Okay.
And is it one parcel?
I didn't get
One
in,
parcel, or is it, or do they have to be at least together for 3 acres? Because if someone owns an acre here, an acre here, an acre here of agriculture, do they, that's my.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
So we might want to clarify
You could
that.
say combined, a minimum of a combined 3 acres.
Contiguous.
I'd say
Contiguous,
Yeah.
yep. In the industrial and commercial zones, if, they can be used for shipping and receiving merchandise. If it's there longer than, if a container's sitting there longer than 180 days, you need to get a building permit for it. And so what the building code would require is that, you weld a chain to it and you cement that into the ground. There's probably some engineering to that, but simplified, that's your securing it to the ground. That it could be as simple as that. One question or one thought that Adam and I had as we were talking about this ordinance under number B in industrial and commercial zones, do we want to limit how many permanent ones you could have? Do we want to say, you can only have 6, or you can only have 5, or do you have 10?
Commercial?
In commercial or industrial zones?
If a business is designed where they basically create a whole bunch of cubicles to separate product and stuff, I don't know, in a commercial zone, do we want to really say you can only have 3?
Because in a commercial zone, if it's permanent, it needs to meet our commercial design standards. But it would need to be clad with something different.
What if they're selling shipping containers?
Yeah, I think that's a retail use that,
Business.
yeah, I
And
think would have.
this doesn't, but once somebody like down on U-Cart Concrete, once they take 2 or 3 shipping containers and weld them together and use it as a structure, permitted, that's okay. We're not gonna cause problem for people like U-Cart currently has, 3 shipping containers welded together, and that's their office building.
As long as they went through the process with site plan approval from the planning commission and got a building permit for it. So like,
Building inspector has to follow it, right?
yeah. So,
I don't think it's so important to put a number on that
okay.
at this point. I
Well-
do think that they ought to, where we talk about that it needs to be clad or painted, maybe we ought to have something that says, in accordance with the adopted color palette, you know, that we have. Yeah, I don't think you wanna see pink.
And I don't have that for commercial.
Well,
The old color palette would only come into play in commercial and industrial. We,
you don't have it for residential.
no, we don't, sorry, yes, I don't have it for
I was
residential.
gonna address that. I think you should say, I mean, right there it says,
We can't apply design standards to residential. The state legislature,
well, let's just talk about commercial and
Okay.
industrial for a minute. Right there where it says it has to be clad, is this residential?
that's residential.
Okay, well, doesn't it say in the commercial that it has to be clad or painted?
No,
I think it should.
But, but those might just be a temporary solution for a company's storage needs, so I wouldn't
that's
wanna
not-
paint it.
That's not what we're talking about,
They can
though.
have it up to 100.
If
They
it's-
can have it as a temporary,
days, it's fine.
but if they have it as a permanent, then it needs to meet the standards of a
Commercial
building.
standards.
And that should mean it meets the color palettes that we've got and adopted for commercial.
And is that just taken care of in the ordinance?
we
Once
would
they
have
make
to
it
add
personal?
that it would need to,
But once it becomes
Meet-
permanent, it needs to be part of a site plan?
it depends on the square footage. If
Okay.
it's less than 1,000 square feet, I can approve that. If it's greater than 1,000 square feet, then it needs to come
Yeah.
to you.
But while we're writing this ordinance, I think we can say that if they're going to use a container as a permanent storage, it needs
Needs
to
to meet the commercial design standards. We could do something like that.
If it's not visible from
What does it hurt to paint it?
Well, there is part of that because we do have something that says if it's commercial abutting residential, you have to put up a wall. So now we say you have to put up a wall and you have to paint it, you know.
So what?
Yeah, you're right. I'm just pointing out that, you know, there could be,
Maybe you do that for a commercial, but
If they came in and
industrial's a
said,
little
hey,
more
I wanna build
flexible.
a storage unit, they would be required to paint it.
and I don't think painting's a huge issue for most of them.
No.
But we're just talking about, that's a permanent structure.
I worry a little bit about design standards, especially in commercial, right? It doesn't have to be 40% brick or, you know, I mean, we have some pretty strict commercial design standards that we want a certain look, and if we have to turn around and apply that same standard to a container, that doesn't
I
make
don't
any
know if
sense.
that applies
Or-
to
or
like
what
a
if we- Like Rob said, what if we just say
Shed.
the color palette of the commercial design standards or something?
That's fine.
Now, I feel that would be comfortable.
For both
maybe
commercial and industrial, or just commercial?
Commercial and industrial.
Okay.
And quite frankly, I'd like to see some way in residential, because I think it affects resident neighbors more than,
Well, yeah, and that's where Mike's saying we can't do that is because
We have no
there's
residential
somebody down
design
on 400
standards.
West just painted a home orange down there. Well, there ain't a dang thing we can do about
well,
it.
no, they're,
Well, that means they can match the container
Well,
orange as well.
Can we say there's no lettering?
well, here's.
It does say that.
It does say
All right,
that.
so let me tell you the devil's advocate. Why can you say they can't have lettering on it?
Sorry, I don't understand.
I don't either, no.
What? How'd that happen?
I don't
Because I'm not calling out a specific
No,
design standard.
I'm
just-
making a point.
Yeah.
You're saying that you can tell a resident that he can have a container, but he has to cover the lettering on the.
Right.
But I'm not
If you're
telling them what
doing that, why
color.
can't you say, well, you have to paint it the same as our
Well,
palette?
that's true, and there's a lot of cities that prohibit them completely. So are we
Yes.
being flexible to allow them to begin with, but
We
we're
are
not saying,
being
hey,
flexible.
you gotta at least paint them. So
And
they
that's-
don't look like,
And that's what we're doing. We're saying you've got to paint it to cover
Mike's
up.
just saying we just can't tell them what
What
color to
color.
paint.
Yes, I just can't
Yeah.
tell them what color.
I
That's
think
fine.
I think
That's
you
fine.
can.
In a residential?
Sure, why not?
Well, a part of that is one of the things that we've had some heartburn over for quite a while, is that we have no commercial design standards in the city.
But can we say that it needs to complement or go along with the decor of the home? That's probably what we can do, is say it needs
That's
to.
pretty subjective.
I don't know, see, cause what if
That's
somebody wants to
subjective.
turn it into their kid's playhouse and they wanna paint it green and put flowers on it and do all the stuff they want to do to make it cutesy in their backyard?
Right.
Well, they'd have to
If
get
they-
a building permit for that. because it's larger than 200 square feet.
120,
120?
yeah.
I don't know, I think we're writing an ordinance for a shipping container that's supposed to be on a ship coming across the ocean. And if we can't tell them, hey, you can have it in your backyard, but your neighbor, it's gonna impact your neighbor a little bit.
That's right.
So color it tan, or color it the color of your home, or something to make
Well,
it.
you had that in there, didn't you, Mike? That
I've said that it can be clad in a material comparable to the on-site single-family dwelling or painted to cover any advertising letters or numbers on the container.
Comparable is fine.
We could say, I could come up with some language that, is general enough that gets us there to, say that should be
I'm
in
not trying to
harmony
tell
with
them
the,
what color they have to paint it, or, I just, you can.
I think the comparable does it for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So,
I'll run some language by Brian and,
Let's
because
say-
if someone wants to put into a kid's treehouse or whatever, or playhouse, it could still be comparable.
I think that's
like
still
you said.
the
so
theme
if
of the
somebody
house.
puts one in their yard and they wanna paint it Barbie pink. Well,
What if the girl
Or
likes
it's,
Barbie?
or it's a red color, and in order to cover the lettering, they happen to have an old can of orange paint to spray paint over the letters, so you've got mostly red with just like a block of orange paint covering the letters. I mean, they're gonna say, well, I met the
Right
ordinance.
next door fence.
I guess I interpreted it as it would probably, if it had a bunch of writing on it, it would need to be painted a color kind of matching the home of some sort.
see, the end result, in my opinion, is you shouldn't be able to paint a storage container and make it offensive to your neighbor. You should either color it a color that's an earth tone color or something, or paint it any color you want, but screen it.
It's like, let's,
And then you
What
get
about a
into the
shed
enforcement.
that's what I was gonna
I
bring,
built
like
that
Tough
looks
Shed
terrible.
could, like if Tough Shed brought in a shed and put it in your yard, we, I don't look at what color they,
Yeah, those
Maybe
aren't
you should.
regulated. Our neighbor just painted his bright red.
Right, I mean, I don't think there's
Right
any ordinance
next to our
that
fence, so.
says you could go, I could paint my shed, I could paint it purple polka dot or whatever, and
let me come up with some language in the ordinance to see if I can.
There are communities that take a position that you as a resident can do just about anything you want, but you can't do something that's so considered offensive to your neighbor. And I think we don't think about that enough in Lindon.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I agree.
I have no problem requiring clarifying language in there to make it so where it's, but we've never wanted to be the paint police either, but some language, that gives them some flexibility, but it does. I mean, I like what he says about, I wanna prevent somebody from coming in and putting just paint over the top of
Just the lettering.
just the letters. I want them to paint the box.
And you know what, 95% or 99% of people
Would do it.
will do it, paint it, and it'll look nice, and it won't be offensive.
But you've got the 5%.
But you've got a few people that
And that
might.
5% would live next to me, I bet.
But I think the point was made that if, some cities are saying no to storage containers, I think it's okay to put some conditions on them if they want to keep them long-term. I mean, I'm okay with that, but it has to be pretty clear and specific,
Yeah.
and
And I'm okay with it too.
they are cool and they are handy. I don't personally own any, but I mean, I've seen some pretty cool stuff where people have used them for some really good storage or little barns or paddocks and.
So we need to tell Mike what we want him to do then.
Well, I think he understands what we want. He can work with Brian to determine the language he wants to use
Okay.
on that.
And there was one other thing we were talking about too.
Well, are we done? Are we moving
Ordinance.
on to another issue
Oh.
regarding it?
I mean, I think the two things that we need to decide when we come back and talk about it and open up public hearing is 1,200 square feet, and then we talked about this color thing. Those are the two notes I have that we need to talk about. So,
The other one was mentioned in the beginning, I would like to discuss the semi-trailer issue.
Yes.
I think that's a bigger issue.
Yeah, I would like to discuss the semi-trailer issue.
And then one last item I had for the presentation was, Rob had brought up last time about screening those in residential zones. I struggle a little bit what that screening looked like, so I didn't include anything in this, but because I was wondering, okay, how do we say that it's, because you're still gonna see it probably, the top of it, and what about corner lots, what do we do on, I kept it more with, okay, let's try to just make it more clad or painted, so it's, looks more like the single family home.
Don't get a Harbor Freight camouflage 20 by 25 tarp and just hang it up.
You screened it.
Oh, my goodness, this gets bigger and bigger, it feels like.
So,
is there more of the presentation?
nope, I think that's it.
Okay,
Well, so it
Do
sounds
it.
like we have to continue it then, right?
well,
For
let's,
those
let,
changes,
I
or-
don't know, well, let's talk through the changes and then
let's talk through the changes
Okay,
and before I, let's open the public hearing and see if there's any comments, and we can close the public hearing if there's not. So do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. The public hearing is now open. Is there anybody here that would like to address the planning commission on this
This
matter?
young lady, I think, probably has something to say. She's been sitting here the whole meeting.
go home.
she just wants us to get done.
Hearing no comment, and no one that wants to comment, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, let's discuss this as a council. Or the commission. I guess we're not a council, we're a commission.
Before you even hear that.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna correct you on that one.
No,
No, I didn't mean to either.
oh, I caught myself, so my hearing aids aren't working really well because I caught so if you corrected me, I didn't hear it. But, so maybe if we go through these issues, does anybody want to speak on the 12,000 square foot requirement? Are we good with that?
I don't have heartburn with that. That's
Now, we're
the third of
saying
an acre.
they can use those temporarily on a because like you said, the example of a
Construction or-
flood or something like that.
Right.
I think that's okay. So as long as that's in there, I'm okay.
Yeah,
Just can't
that's in there.
permanently put one on there.
Okay, I think we're good with that, so we can,
The semi-trailers,
yeah, semi-trailers, what,
Yeah, I think semi-trailers need to be part of it, because sometimes you can pick up a semi-trailer just as cheap as you can a storage box, and they actually have a little bit of they're taller.
more
They
visible.
sit up, they actually encroach the neighbors more, so I think semi-trailers should be included with the exception of currently registered operable
What do you mean they should be included?
in the
accepting them?
definition of.
I'd like to maybe just add it to this section saying, so semi-trailers are not included in the definition of.
Yeah,
Well, what I'm saying is they should be included.
I'm saying
They
they
sh-
should,
they-
he's saying, if it becomes an inoperable,
Unregistered
unregistered place, it
storage
becomes
container with
permanent
wheels,
after
then
18
that should
months.
be excluded. However, if somebody owns a trucking company or something and they have 2 or 3 trailers that they rotate, but it's currently registered, and currently registered could be something as little as a permanent fleet registration, which isn't an annual fee, and it doesn't have blown out tires, it's not stuck on then that should be allowed, because that's their use of their property. But when somebody wants to just goes down and buys a cheap trailer that has the bottom rusted out of it, and they haul it in there and use it as a storage box, then that becomes a problem, because not only does it look bad, but now it's taller.
I think we're saying the same thing, but I
Yes.
think you're saying it different. Because it sounds like to me, you're saying it's okay to have a trailer there with wheels. And Well, I'm not talking about temporary, I'm talking about permanent.
Well, maybe we
Yeah.
just say no
I say
permanent
no
use
trailers.
of trailers, and I'm probably
storage
okay
uses.
with that.
I think I
Permanent.
am too, because
Permanent use, okay, if we say, if we use the permanent use,
We're
yeah.
not talking about temporary.
They're really
Okay.
not designed for permanent storage.
And you look at how many other cities on that graph that he sent us originally, we're one of the few cities that are even allowing the storage containers. So
Right.
to stretch that as far as semi-trailer,
No, what I'm saying is
I
we
think
do
that's
not
too
want them.
far.
We do not want
Do not want
semi,
semi-trailers.
we do not want semi-trailers.
Permanent,
That's not how you worded it.
I'm sorry, if I worded, I do not want, you know, semi-trailers parked on these lots
well, and I think
with, and then there is an,
if they're
the exception
operational,
is if they're operational,
they'll be,
no one's.
they should be moved within 180
That'll be a
days.
business license and
yeah,
stuff.
and they'd be part of a commercial.
Okay, I just, that's
Yeah.
right, that's where I'm going.
One little caveat is if somebody bought a trailer and they took the container off the axles, or off the axles and wheels and set it down, it's a storage unit.
Well, and I'm saying, I'm okay saying that you cannot do that.
Yeah, I don't-
And,
yeah.
and there's a little difference too, because from an engineering perspective, you can use storage containers to build roofs on them and things like that. These truck boxes are not
No.
engineered for that reason, so it's not really a long-term storage solution, and I think it just then
They're as
becomes
good as a
very
plastic
run
one
down
you buy at
and
Sears.
trashy looking.
So how do we exclude them?
I'll just add something, I'll add, you know, another letter in here that that specifically addresses this item.
That's all I'm saying.
Exclude them.
Me
And sorry I worded that incorrectly. Yeah, I just didn't want to prevent somebody from running a trucking company who owns a long-haul semi-truck and he's gonna be home for a month
Yeah,
and parks it in his driveway and say you can't do that.
Well, right,
I wanted to prevent, I want to prevent
that's
that,
temporary, yeah.
but,
Yeah, but I like the idea of somebody building, you know, they're building and they've got building material that they need to lock up, because all that stuff has legs, it gets stolen every day. I mean, I'm okay with that scenario, but
Right.
it's just not designed to be a long-term storage.
correct.
Yeah, and this is backtracking just a little bit, but I just flipped back to this graph that was sent to us as far as other cities and what they allow on this, and of course, with most cities, they're prohibited completely. But I really like Saratoga Springs' definition that they have. They just got allowed if color and construction are compatible with and similar to the primary structure. Buildings over 200 square feet shall be built with durable materials except metal on exterior walls. Shall include a wainscot siding or other similar architectural feature covering a minimum of 30%. So that's pretty strict, but I still like, I mean, most other cities just completely prohibit it. And this is one of the few that does, and they're putting
Well,
some
it
pretty strict
might be that they
requirements
do
on
that.
it.
I got a bunch of nieces and nephews that live over there, and I don't know that any of them are on bigger than a 10,000 square foot lot.
We actually are kind of more strict in that sense.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that if we're gonna be one of the few cities that allow it, it's okay for us to have some pretty strict requirements.
Yeah.
And in the ordinance, Mike, on number H, portable storage containers are not permitted on vacant property except where allowed as part of an ongoing agriculture. So vacant property, does that mean a piece of property that doesn't have a home on it?
Yeah.
And you look at this,
In the residential area, yeah.
In a residential area?
yeah.
I mean, every one of them are pretty.
Okay, because I'm thinking of a property near me that applies, but I'm not, you know, I'm just wondering if that's what that applies to, because originally, is that new when you added that? It seems like I don't recall that. I remember just saying you couldn't have more on one lot. I don't,
Before had a bunch of green, this is new, it had some green belt language in there that you had to meet green belt requirements to be able to have 2 shipping containers on an agricultural lot.
okay, so if it doesn't have a home on it, you can't have any,
Right.
You make the speeches.
regardless of size.
Sorry, say that one more time.
not true.
I'll say that once.
If it doesn't have a home on it,
And it's not agricultural.
and it's not agricultural, it can't have one on it.
Well, I mean, agricultural, I'm not saying it has to be zoned agricultural. I'm just saying it has to have you have to have a minimum 3 acres. So really where this all came about was,
And that's the one thing I was gonna mention.
was,
As we think about this, the home, Miss Terry, who's come, I'm sure she would like to be here. I don't know if everybody knows, her husband passed away, and the funeral's this week, so I'm assuming that's why she's not here, and so in our decision what to move forward or not, I don't know if we want to consider that. Hopefully she'd be able to make it to the city council meeting to express her opinions, but I'm sure that's somebody who's very interested in this ordinance.
Right.
and so this is the example of, Tony Cook's property here. This is 3 acres, just over 3 acres. He would be allowed to have 2 shipping containers.
Right now, he's got how many?
Well,
Well, he had
he is down to
11.
2.
He's in compliance now.
Well, and he's got a semi-trailer back there too.
Let's see.
But- And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, he did have 11 shipping containers on there, so.
I just really struggle with any kind of, your diesel trailer. I just really struggle with allowing that at all.
I think I've got some direction on, we'll add some stuff for that.
The trend is to try to make our communities look a little more upscale, a little nicer.
Mhm.
I guess the question could be asked, why are we even letting people do storage containers?
Yeah,
Well, right now, I don't think you have anything that does prohibit them. So,
Well, looking at the list that you provided
We were
us,
just looking at that.
I mean, you've
together.
got cities in Daggett County that don't permit them, but Lindon and Utah County does.
right now, we currently do. We don't have any regulations for them. If someone wanted to come in and,
I know that.
so yeah.
I'm
We are a
just
little bit of
asking,
country.
I'm just asking why why do we think we have to let them have it? I'm not saying I don't want them, but I guess I'm asking, why is it that we feel so strongly that we should let them have them? When Orem doesn't, Provo doesn't,
Oh,
mean-
Provo does.
Provo does,
One per
One per
residential or
residential.
agricultural, but that's one of the very few.
and that's not a question of Mike, it's a question of our.
But I think too, when you look at Orem, Orem doesn't have they're fairly small lots, vast percentage of their city. And by our standards, we would prohibit it, because they're not 12,000, they're not 1/3 acre lots, they're 1/4 acre lots, many of them.
Does that make a
But they
difference?
have a lot
I
that.
just think
Why does that
a
make a
lot that
difference?
could.
they're useful for some applications.
And
When you
and
do
done
this.
right,
No
they don't
question.
look bad.
Huh?
And done right, they don't look bad.
And that's the key is,
Well, why do so many
Whether they're
cities
gonna be taken
prohibit
care
them
of.
then?
I think the same,
I'm playing the devil's advocate.
yeah, I think the same thing that he just said is that, we don't see it being a common sense thing on less than 12,000 square foot lots.
Yeah.
And when the average lot size in a city is less than 12,000 square foot lots, it would make sense to prohibit it everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had 8,000 square foot lots, 6,500 square foot lots in Orem I've owned before. It'd be ridiculous to think I should have a storage container that takes up 25% of the lot.
Of the lot, yeah.
So, I mean, that's answers its own question as why some of these cities
I
don't.
think the reason people are against them is how they look, not how much square footage they take up or how much.
But don't you think they look worse when they're crammed in there and
They could.
barely the home even fits on there and then they bring it?
They could. But on a smaller lot, you're more restricted as to where you can put them. On a bigger lot, you can put them
I
more
think,
places,
I
like on a
think,
side yard.
I think in response to why other cities had, maybe that was the easy way out. We're being more thoughtful, we're taking into account more the needs and desires of our community. We're going through this process where other communities like Cedar Hills just said, oh, no, we don't want those in our area, period. And they didn't discuss it.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think these cities probably took a lot of
I think it has to
thought
do with
and
aesthetics.
process put into it.
Yeah.
I think they probably put the same amount of caring and concern into it as we have.
You know, I
Well,
know
but,
we as a
but
group
again,
have
if our average lot size was 8,000 square foot, I don't even think this would be on our agenda here.
No, we'd have prohibited if our average size lot was
Right.
8,000 square feet, but we are half-acre lots, we're a little bit of country, we have commercial farm zones, we have, you know, we still
We
have,
are a little bit of country, but that doesn't mean we have to look bad.
agreed.
And I think too, even in our 12,000, our R112 zone, I mean, you have a 10-foot side yard setback.
True.
I don't know how you'd really get these in, even in a backyard necessarily, unless you're on a corner lot or something, so. I think this is more applicable to our larger R120 lots.
You know, there's part of me, I've driven around the community, and there are some storage containers on some lots in our community,
Yes.
and every one of them look bad.
Because there are no regulations. And what we're saying right now, I think was interesting when we looked through this whole thing, is the question was asked, how many permitted storage containers do we already have in the city? And that's one. So that means code compliance can now go out and say, we don't show a permit on file for your, you're not pre-existing, that needs to come into compliance. Needs to be permanent, needs to be put on gravel, it needs to be painted, it needs to be, meet the setbacks. So now we at least have the ability to do that through code compliance, where right now we can't do anything.
Right, because there's no code to say.
But-
For
but
example,
Can we do that to somebody that's had it on their property for 20 years?
I'll have to work with Brian on that. I mean,
Yeah,
we
I
have
don't
our,
think you
we
can,
have, I mean, we
personally.
have 3 of our own at Public Works, and
I mean, that's the whole point of getting an ordinance in place, because I think you'd be hard pressed to go backwards on people that have had them, already got them before the ordinance is in place.
With the, with the
You may be
exception,
able to make them paint
with
or
the
something.
exception of
You're not
they're not permitted. They're not permitted, if they jumped through the hoops and got them permitted 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's unlikely.
Yeah, that's, like I say, it's unlikely. It's just really hard from an enforcement standpoint
Yeah.
to go back out now and say, oh, well, how long has it been there? For us to be, at least have the teeth to go say, hey, we see you have one on your property. These are the guidelines. I'm not telling you to move it. We're telling you to put it on a gravel pad, paint it,
Clean it up.
clean it up, keep it away from the setbacks. That's what it just gives us the,
I'm going through things with the city of Orem. If I wanna build a dumpster enclosure, I have to make sure that it's aesthetically pleasing. Okay?
that's what it's trying to do.
Guys, I need to get you on the city council of Orem. Because they're trying to make their community, image look better.
Yeah.
And I think we can allow containers, and I think we can put a few restrictions on it to make it look better. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right.
it's up to you. You can put those, you can see what Saratoga Springs has, if you want to go that direction.
I think you put a lot of work into the way it is, and I'm comfortable the way it is, the way you put it, with the addition of prohibiting the semi-trailers.
And
The
then,
guy-
so, go ahead, Rob.
The guy over here on Fourth North in Locust has what, 4? And they're blue, red, orange,
Yeah, I'm not sure
So
how many,
will
but
he have to go in and paint?
I don't know. That's something I have to talk to Brian about. He may need to at least get a building permit for them, but I don't know about painting them.
But can he get a building permit without painting them? Because part of the building permit says.
Yeah, that's something I have to talk to Brian about.
Yeah, I mean, can you get a building permit for 4 of them on the same property?
Right.
Because
Yeah,
that doesn't sound right.
So what you're gonna do is put some of our suggestions into this and consult with Brian, and then it will go to city council.
yeah,
If we, well, yeah.
yeah, if you
unless we
decide to,
continue it.
Alternatively, the guy's got
So,
all the stuff that's in the storage units scattered all over
Can you
this
put
lot.
those suggestions
Yeah.
into the ordinance without us continuing it? Okay,
But if we wanted to, we could, but.
right.
The other consideration is everybody feel okay? I pointed out that the 3 acres should be contiguous.
Yes, that's
I
fine. I
agree
agree.
with that.
That they, right, that they shouldn't be just
Right.
random 3 acres. Those were the points I had, that we're okay with the 1,200 square feet. We want to add semi-trailers,
Prohibitions.
prohibitions, and that the 3 acres need to be together.
Now, explain the 3 acres.
Just to clarify that agriculture of 3 acres can't be 1 acre here, 1 acre. It has to be 3 acres
Contiguous.
contiguous, so that,
That's okay.
So it gives you the elbow room that might justify another, yeah,
the second container.
right.
The last one I had was, painting in the commercial and industrial zones.
Oh,
The
yes, so we want
containers.
them part of the color palette.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So if whoever makes the motion, if you can
Do we have to
recommend that.
list all of those, or can we just say with changes recommended?
I mean, it seemed to me like Walmart one year brought in a bunch of storage containers.
They do every year.
But
do every year.
that's temporary.
It's
So they can do
temporary.
that.
They bring them in while they're redoing their
This
floors
ordinance
and
just
doing
says
their-
you can't put them in drive aisles,
So,
so.
Industrial, I mean, you got a bunch of rusty equipment all over the place. I just don't see the need for a business to incur that expense.
Expense to do what? Paint?
Paint.
It's whether, would you rather see their junk in a container or their junk just scattered around? That's Jared's point.
Well, but most of the time when we approve something, we tell them they have to keep their junk in a fenced area.
That doesn't make it not visible though in the industrial zone.
So
To some degree it does.
the permanent use of these storage containers behind a fence, is that okay? Like, without painting them?
We're talking in the industrial zone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's gonna be visible to the public, it's still gonna be visible to the public, because fences are only 6, 7 feet tall, but.
It makes it better. I think, we're always adamant that when it's a, auto repair, that there's no vacant, no cars left. Except beyond, or within a fenced area, they have to be within a fenced area.
Yeah.
I mean, what if we added that for the industrial zone, that it's either screened or painted
I like
What do you
that.
think?
I like that.
for the industrial?
Yeah.
behind the fence, I don't think it necessarily has to be painted. So I guess the question was raised, Mike, should we just do the motion asking staff to incorporate the changes requested, or should we?
What if I just list them real quick and then you could just say as, as,
That's what I thought that would be
as,
good.
read by staff or?
Okay, so let's have
So,
Mike.
so lots less than, or not allowing on lots less than 12,000 square feet, removing, or adding a section that doesn't allow for semi-trailers, that are
Be
in.
permanently.
Permanent, inoperable, or, those things. Contiguous 3 acres of agricultural property. Let's see, that they would be painted in a commercial zone. In an industrial zone, they would either need to be screened or painted.
Using the
Color palette, yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, I think we're ready for someone to make the motion, and you can just mention the changes mentioned by Mike.
Well, I guess I can do it.
Okay, we'll have Sharon.
Okay, I move to recommend approval of ordinance 2024-02-O, or is that 0O, I guess? With changes as recommended by the planning director.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I,
Aye. Any opposed? The voting is unanimous. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is items from the council and from the planning director. Mike, do you have items for us?
One ordinance amendment coming up that I've had some residents apply for, so I want you to start thinking about. I'm going to be putting an ordinance together. They live, let's see, where's the church? So they own this home right here. This is 400 North. You've got an LDS chapel right there. So 400 North, I don't know, let's see what.
Canal Drive.
Yeah.
Canal Drive's to the
Canal
right.
Drive's right there. So they own this home. Their last name's the Butlers.
Oh, yeah.
So they own this home and they own this home.
Yeah.
And so they have started this business called Sunnyside Urban Farm.
Right.
We're working with them to come into compliance, and that will require an ordinance amendment. So they've applied for an urban farms ordinance to allow residential properties to have people come and pick flowers, offer classes, pick vegetables, have a vegetable stand, do some, classes and things.
To be sold on their property,
On their-
not for retail, they're not
Well,
doing it to sell it to someone else.
They
she does have a
could.
little shed thing there that she has people put things in there to sell. It's very cute what she's doing.
Yeah.
I really like it. I'd like to,
They may have people come you pick flowers, you pick pumpkins, then they'll also sell them have their,
but somebody might bring in the crafts and sell crafts out of the shed.
Yeah, they do. Other people actually come in and sell their,
just one of the homes.
yeah, they sell their, they
It's
have
a
others
tiny
come in and
little
sell their
garage.
products too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So,
like a farmer's market type thing.
yep. So that's something, I don't know if it won't be on the next commission meeting, but it'll probably be the second meeting in March. So that's something to look forward to that, we're gonna have to discuss, how does this apply citywide, not just on this property? And so,
Minimum lot size and stuff like that could all come into play.
because they're running a commercial business out of
You're running a swim school.
and that's a home occupation business, and we've got
That's why
regulation,
I'm wondering.
yeah.
That's what I wondered, how is this different than a home occupation business?
Because they are not specifically just running it out of their home.
Okay,
A home occupation, you either have to run it out of your home or 20% out of a garage. So this,
Run it out of their whole lot.
they want to run this out of the whole lot.
Well, there's two parcels there.
Yeah, 2 parcels. So that'll be something to think about. The ordinance, they want to allow up to 14 parking stalls. So, you're be bringing a number of public into into a residential neighborhood for a commercial zone. And so,
Yeah, I hate to make it so formal. Man, it's cute what she's doing there, but parking stalls and then, is there a need for bathrooms? Is there a need for, then it just starts to,
Well,
it
but
doesn't
right
look very
now-
organic anymore.
Yeah.
And it really,
right now though, they are parking all along that, all
Yeah,
on
there's
400
plenty
North.
of
There's
room
no
to park
place
on
to
there.
park.
yeah.
So
Um,
I don't know. I agree with kind of what you're saying, except that there are some problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you introduce a commercial use into a residential neighborhood, you need to be careful, because,
I know,
you could do 10 more of these, what,
right.
and maybe might be awesome to have 10 more of these,
But
but,
it's like the city's coming so hard down on kids selling lemonade or something like that. I know she's going beyond selling lemonade, but, all of a sudden, a lemonade stand, you have this bureaucratic red tape to cut through to sell lemonade.
But
And
they got rid of it.
We don't.
They got rid of that this year, at the state level.
we have an ordinance that says if you make less than $1,000 a year, you don't need a business license, so.
pay your kids
So-
$5,000 a piece,
So-
or something like that, and your profits less than that.
But then there's also things like, the yoga classes and the pressed flower classes and, so those are things that are currently happening. there as well, so.
Goat yoga at my property.
Mary Kay
Yeah.
Distributors.
So
So how do you, I mean, I guess we'll get to that.
we've
but
been meeting and discussing options and things, so.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not going to be an ordinance as big as the commercial farm zone. It'll be a lot simpler, but I think it needs some parameters, so when the next person wants to do this as well, we can say, okay, here you go.
Well, just one thing I wondered about, all the piping that's going in along Center Street, is that all in preparation for the temple? Or what, is all that piping, is that?
Yeah.
And then at what point, do they
So-
start putting in all the curbs and gutters?
I think that'll come later this year.
Okay. And I assume the city, there's a few of those properties that will have to be kind of cut into?
Yeah, there'll be there'll be a few, we'll need to talk to about that. If you go on our city website, if you go to construction updates,
Oh, okay.
I think that's culinary water.
yeah, so you've got Canal Drive waterline replacement, Center Street waterline replacement, UDOT updates. So you can click here and see, okay, here's the waterline replacement, here's the scope, the purpose, what to expect, here's the work schedule,
That's terrific.
so.
So along that line, they're putting, looks like they're extending the storm drain beyond Tim Clyde's property. Is that a city project?
Yes, I think Juan has coordinated with his contractor to extend that, and the
Looks
city's
like they're
paying for
going
that.
up a little bit, past Locust.
Okay.
I mean, they put it in, I think Tim put it in, and he's put his fence up, but it does look, they've extended that a ways.
Yeah, I think Juan worked with them on that.
And Tim Clyde's place is looking amazing.
Looking
huh?
good, yep.
Yeah. And what else does he have to do this first? I mean, we gave him stages that he had to work through. What else does he have to do right now?
I don't remember right offhand,
I thought it was
but,
half the sidewalk or something.
but yeah, I think he's just gonna do it all. He bonded for everything, so
Oh, he did.
I think he's just gonna try and get it all done.
Yeah,
Just
I
tired
think
of it
the
all,
second
and-
year was half the sidewalk, and the third year was the other
Yeah.
half the sidewalk.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, it is looking amazing from what it did.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like the way he sort of, for side obstructions, he pulled the walls back at his entrances so they can come out and actually see what's coming. He's
Yeah.
not.
That's part of that ordinance we passed
Yeah,
earlier this year, or last year,
yeah, so that works.
yeah.
And just to mention, Rob was honored for 50 years at University Mall of.
Woodbury
being a-
Corporation.
Yeah, but it's University Mall, but Woodbury Corporation, 50 years there.
That's a long
And
time.
that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, his wife told me he was the 9th employee that Woodbury
Yeah,
hired, and now they have over 2,000.
3,500.
3,500, okay.
Wow.
I think that's pretty neat. And then I heard another rumor that Cheesecake Factory's gonna be in what they call the Callis Courtyard.
Oh, yeah.
How fun is that? So I thought we ought to know what a celebrity this guy is.
Yeah, celebrity.
They should put him as a dedicated table in there.
Anything
And
else,
free
Mike?
food.
Nothing else? Anything from the
I don't
commissioners?
Yeah, I got one. I received, not necessarily a complaint, just to make the city aware. On Anderson Boulevard, right there in the middle of the S-curve, you come in off Anderson Boulevard, there's a S-curve there to go in. And just as you're coming out of that S-curve, all of a sudden, all there is 2 reflective signs and a crosswalk with no lighting. And it's really, my son has been caught, my son-in-law has been caught a couple times, coming around the corner, your headlights don't illuminate the crosswalk sign or the people crossing until you're right on top of them. So he's had several times where a young kid was on his bike or something coming across there, and if it's after dark, there's no lighting there. So, yeah, right there. So traffic engineering really should, the way it's positioned, there's no flashing lights, there's no street lights as well. So maybe it'd be as simple as street lights or something, but just to point, he just wanted me to mention that to you, and I went through and looked at it myself and went, oh yeah, I can see your point, especially if you're coming from the north. If you're coming from the north, as you come around, those orange signs really aren't illuminated till you're well within 100 feet of the crosswalk and you're doing 25 miles an hour.
Okay.
So that was just his comment, and it made a lot of sense. When I went and looked at it at night, I went, oh, I see what he says. I see what he's saying.
You mean that the yellow signs are not reflective?
They are reflective, but based on the curve, your headlights aren't really
They don't hit 'em.
illuminate them
Yeah, they don't.
until you are head on to it, and now you only have 50 feet to really start to say, oh my gosh, there's somebody crossing the crosswalk, and there's no street lights illuminating the crosswalk either.
They could put some solar flashers
Yeah.
on those signs.
And the problem with that type of thing as well, from my traffic experience, is whenever you put a crosswalk across there like that, it makes the pedestrian feel like, ooh, I got the right of way. I'm just gonna walk and they have to stop for me. Even though the law probably doesn't say that, it says you still can't enter a roadway when vehicles are so close as to constitute a hazard. But pedestrian, that's why typically mid-block crosswalks by traffic engineering standards are denied because of that very purpose. So anyway, he just wanted to point that out, and I went through and looked at it, and I agreed that somebody ought to look at it.
Okay.
Anything else? I failed to mention recognizing Councilmember Jacobs here.
Well, I wasn't here when you started, so you didn't.
Is there anything from you that you'd like to impart to us?
No, just amazed at all of your process and thoughts, great ideas, great comments, great thoughts.
We're here to make your life easier.
If there's no other,
May I ask
yep,
just one, did, I don't remember, did Walmart apply to put gas?
Yes,
Yeah,
to this?
a long time ago. It's taken a long time to
About a
bring
year.
it's been a couple years.
Can't even remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah. I noticed they're
I
putting
mean, I
those
knew
in.
they were doing it, but I couldn't ever remember it coming before this.
it did.
Yeah,
yeah, it
Yep.
did.
yeah, they're doing one in almost all the Walmarts I've seen
Yeah.
recently.
Have they pursued their
The
delivery
drone,
service, drone?
they're still doing it. They have just a couple more months to get us a site plan and a building in, because it's, they're close, their temporary site plan approval is close to
I was
being
wondering if they
terminated.
made any comment about their success.
All they need is a
I don't-
storage container.
Yeah,
Run it out.
I don't know how
Can
successful it's
start
been.
business, can't they?
Yeah, it's painted gray.
Gotta be painted though, the color palette.
The times I've been there, I haven't seen any
Yeah.
tent up or the drones flying.
I
Street
wondered
or
if it was
something,
not
but now
successful.
now they've expanded
don't-
their range.
And
So
did
you
our,
you can
did
up
our
to 10
bank
pounds. You
on
can call
State
them
Street,
mining
did that
wells,
fizzle?
and a drone
No,
will
it's
drop
still
it
in the
off
works.
Is
Or
it?
drop it off
Yeah.
in the front yard.
Is it looking positive?
I haven't spoken to them for a few weeks, but I guess the biggest issue has been they've had some attorneys from back east not understand some of Utah's subdivision laws and things, and that's held some stuff up, so. So, for example, the sidewalk is in an easement, and they don't like that. But it's pretty standard in a lot of places, so that's been a holdup for a while.
But it's looking like they'll probably move forward.
I think so, yeah.
That'd be great.
I thought they would have applied by now, because they were like, a month ago, they were like, how soon can we get on planning commission?
Yeah.
And so,
Okay. If there's no other items, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The voting was unanimous. Now that we're off the record, my watch beeped and BYU did win, so.
Did we win?
BYU
Oh my God.
BYU beat Kansas by 8, so.
My husband was proud